I mentioned the Trojan horses can spy on you or install software which can spy on you, and this software is called, it's got its own name, it's called spyware. So spyware is where the software is collecting information about you without your knowledge. Clearly, if you gave your permission, if you had knowledge of it, you would not be considering it intrusive, and it wouldn't be malware. So it spies on you, it collects information without your knowledge. And a keylogger is a good example of spyware. So a keylogger is a type of spyware which records every single thing you type on your keyboard. So everything you type, it will record it and give it to an attacker. So passwords will show up because they can record which key you're pressing. Also things like your bank details and your everything you're typing. It's quite invasive, obviously, and can be used to maybe steal identities. Keyloggers are fairly old school, although still do exist. This is a photo which this man posted. Hopefully you recognise him, Mark Zuckerberg, who invented Facebook and owns Instagram. He posted this photo back in 2016, and if you zoom into the photo closer, you can see that actually he has taped over his webcam and also his microphone on his laptop. So maybe a more modern version of a keylogger is where spyware can record the input from your microphone and also record your webcam, which is quite scary if you've got a laptop which has got a webcam, or a phone which has got a webcam. Clearly you don't want people, attackers, watching your webcam without you realising. Very, very invasive. So he is protected with tape in this case. There are more technical solutions like anti-malware software. Mark Zuckerberg is very rich, he's a big target, and so he's probably quite worried about spyware. A similar type of malware to spyware is adware. So adware is when, once it's installed on your computer, it'll just show you a whole bunch of advertisements to you, and the goal is to make the developer, the person who made the adware, money, because they can sell access to maybe pop-up adverts. So this is an example which will give you nightmares of loads of different windows popping up. It's really annoying. Sometimes you try and close them and actually it won't let you close them straight away. Really intrusive. Now usually this adware is not malicious in the sense that it's not hostile. Well, intrusive can still be malicious, but not hostile, because it's usually not damaging your computer. It may slow it down, but usually it's not damaging it permanently. But sometimes the actual advert, you may click it and it may download malware like a virus. So this picture here is definitely adware because it's really annoying. It's not just a normal advert. A normal advert like this one on Channel 4's website, I'm trying to watch a film, it has about 5 minutes of adverts before the start. This is not KFC in the advert trying to attack me. It's just a normal advert which is just showing me, a deal, right? So it's not a type of malware if it's a normal advert. It's only really a type of malware once it becomes really intrusive. I have technically consented, I've given my permission to see this advert because I've signed up for Channel 4's website. If it was installed, if this was shown to me without my consent, then it would be adware in terms of malware. Another point about adware, which makes it technically a type of spyware, is if the adware is collecting data about you in order to show adverts which are tailored towards you, it is a type of spyware. So maybe it is collecting data about your name, maybe with a keylogger, and then in the advert it might say your name. Well, clearly that's quite invasive, and definitely it would be a type of spyware because it's collecting data without your knowledge. Another point about adware, if it's just showing you annoying adverts, like this one here is not really collecting data about us, it's just showing us adverts. If it does collect data about us in order to show adverts, then the adware is a type of spyware. So maybe it uses a keylogger to record and find your name, and once it's got your name, they might put your name inside the advert to tailor it to you to try and get you to buy it. But actually that is very intrusive and would make it a type of spyware. So lots of malware we've talked about so far has been around for years and years. Ransomware is a slightly newer version of malware which has been in the news quite a lot in the last few years. A ransom you may know from normal use is money demanded for the release of something. So maybe someone steals a personal photo of you and threatens to release it unless you pay them some money, and then they'll delete it. That money they're demanding is a ransom. So ransoms are illegal in normal life because you're usually kidnapping someone or blackmailing someone, but also there can be malicious in terms of malware, because what will happen in ransomware is it will threaten to block access to files or release personal information unless you pay the money which is the ransom. So we'll either block some access for you or release some files, maybe got via spyware, unless you pay some money. So often this is in recent cases, often this has happened by encrypting your files. We'll talk about what encryption is in a future video, but essentially encryption is making your files unreadable. So you can't open your files as normal unless someone gives you a password to decrypt the file. And of course, they're not going to give you the password unless you pay the money. And often, to make their demands untraceable, they might use a cryptocurrency. You don't need to know what this is, but you may have heard of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is hard to trace, so they may ask for the money in terms of Bitcoin as opposed to paying it via PayPal or something like that, which is very easy to trace. To give you an example of this in action without actually installing it myself, this is a screenshot of some ransomware from 2017 where some attackers, who are apparently from North Korea, they installed ransomware via a worm on lots of computers in different countries, but in particular the NHS in England was affected because their software was really old, essentially. And it locked all of the files on the computer, so no one could access any of their data because it was encrypted, and they asked or told them as a ransom to pay $300 worth of Bitcoin in order to have the files decrypted. Now actually, once you paid it, they still wouldn't decrypt it for you, but it's a ransom, they try and get money from it. And we'll talk more about this as a prevention measure in the future, but the NHS was affected because, as I say, their computers were really old and the software was really old. It's really important to update your software, otherwise bugs in the code can be exploited by attackers like they were in this case. Anyway, let's talk about our final type of malware, which is actually often a collection of malware, which are rootkits. So a rootkit is often not just one type of malware, and honestly modern malware is rarely just one type anyway, but rootkits tend to be a collection of different types of malware. So they might have spyware, might have a backdoor. Often they are used as ways to get in to remotely control a computer. Again, we'll talk about botnets in future videos, or just to access the files on the computer, again via a backdoor. So often they're used for remote access by an attacker, which is obviously not very good. So another key feature of a rootkit is they often work at lower levels than other types of malware, which means they can infiltrate our OS, which stands for our operating system, like Windows or Mac on a computer, iOS maybe on a phone, or also affect your hardware drivers. Now hardware drivers are how things like a microphone or a headset or a storage device can interact with your computer. Don't need to know this in loads of detail, but this does make rootkit especially hard to detect, especially by antivirus software. Let me try and give an example. Like I say, we don't need to know about this in loads of detail, but essentially we can think of our computer as being a stack of different levels. So at the bottom we've got our hardware, so we've got our CPU, which does our processing, we've got maybe a graphics card, a GPU, maybe a hard drive, HDD, and these are our lowest level of our kind of mental model of computers. We then have OSs, so an OS stands for operating system, like Windows is an example. Now we need to have operating systems because they allow other applications like spreadsheets and browsers to work. To be able to access, say, a hard drive from a web browser, it needs to go via our OS. And so normal malware will usually be installed at this sort of application level. So this sort of green layer is usually where maybe a Trojan will get installed. And obviously Trojans are not good, as we talked about. They can also provide backdoors like rootkits can, but the fact that they occur at this level means that usually antivirus software, which also works at this level, can easily get rid of your Trojan. Likewise, a virus, again quite damaging, but often you can get rid of it because it's at this top level. Now, rootkits are more hard to detect and also hard to get rid of because they usually work at lower levels. They can work on the application level, but usually they'll try and infect the actual OS itself. Now, because the OS is sort of managing the security access to the hardware, clearly having rootkit installed here is going to be more of an issue than it would be if it was up in a normal application. But even worse, rootkits can also be attached to our hardware because the hardware has some tiny software installed to make it work, and also drivers sort of work at this level to help devices which are external. But anyway, rootkits can be installed even at the bottom level, which is even harder to get rid of because they are sort of attached to the hardware itself. So rootkits are very hard to detect by antivirus software and also very hard to get rid of once you have it. You may even need to reinstall everything, wipe your computer and start fresh. So not ideal at all.